This week, long distance has already taken a toll on the relationship for one listener. Can the relationship survive? Should the relationship survive? But first, a hit show inspires a discussion about recognizing and embracing our differences. Welcome to the Talking Phase. Hello and welcome to the Talking Phase podcast. My name is Tom. We have an amazing show planned for this week. In fact, I even did some homework. So I think Pam's going to have to grade me on this. So Pam, as always, our beautiful, talented, and amazing co-host is here. Pam, what's going on with you?
I don't know. That sounded a little bit like Hot for Teacher going on there. We'll have to grade you. And if you're really lucky, I will not have to use a paddle board. So we'll see how you do. What's going on with me? It has been quite a week. It's been a little bit chaotic compared to normal. Normally things just move right along. This week, things did move along. They just moved along and out. My long distance relationship that I have mentioned many times on the podcast came to an end. It went out with very little fanfare, very little drama. Now I have one thing on my list that is long distance is absolutely on my list and staying there. So even though I'm opposed to lists, it somehow made it into my orbit and now will see itself out once again. I have proved that I was correct in not ever embarking on that. So I'm still processing that a little bit. I don't have any doubt that it was the best for both of us. It's never easy when something ends. You just have to kind of internalize it, figure out how to let it go as easily as possible. Some people just aren't compatible in ways that matter. And so, I was a little bit disappointed, but, it's always a little bit disappointing when you have hope that something's going to be great and it turns out to be less than great. So even though I'm not quite ready to discuss that in this episode, I will get into it more as we move forward. Maybe it'll help some of the people that listen to the podcast. Who knows? That's what we're here for, right?
That's at least what we like to think. I'm not sure how much we help people, but it's good to think that way.
Yeah, well, if I didn't think that, I don't think I could keep doing this. But with that said, how is your week going, Tom?
Well, first, I'm sorry to hear that you didn't have a great week. I hope that things get better. But I am sorry to hear about it. As far as my life is concerned, just, standard stuff. So doing a lot of business travel. I was in Salt Lake for several days last week. It seems like I'm in Salt Lake a lot, and that seems to be a growing trend and probably going to grow even harder. It was fun last week, though, because Brian was out there for a couple of days. So Brian and I got to hang out together again. And
nice.
But I'm excited to be back in my own place, sleeping in my own bed. Just it's always better that way.
The best part of travel is when you're leaving to go and excited about it. But then when you get back and you get back to your own bed, there's nothing quite like that first night of sleep with your own pillow in your own bed. I remember that well.
Absolutely.
To add to my week, I actually had to go and have a colonoscopy this week also. We did that age-related episode a few ago. I don't think we talked about colonoscopies, and this is my second one. And it's a pretty shitty way to end a week or to start a week. In my case, I started it with that, but at least I got good results. So if you haven't had a colonoscopy and you're over 50, get those done because that's important. Take care of yourself.
Right. And we're recording this in October, and it's we like to call this Proctober. So, get that done.
That's new to me.
With that said, Brian, let's get Brian in here. You made it home from Utah. The Mormons out there didn't get you converted or anything, did they?
Not yet. They're trying though, Tom. Man, they're just knocking on my door nonstop. Is there like a signal that like gets attached to my back as soon as I get back that the Mormons know to go after me?
I think that anytime someone flies into Salt Lake, the Mormons have it's like your Amazon Echo is listening in your living room. I think the Mormons are listening for every flight that lands. And
they're like, this guy's been out in Utah 3 times in the past 6 weeks.
Who doesn't want Brian?
And by the way, you mentioned Hot for Teacher. One of my favorite Van Halen songs, right up there, by the way, with Jump from Van Halen, which was preceded. Folks, okay, now this is something that's personal and near and dear to me. Jump is my favorite Van Halen song. However, there is a song that precedes Jump that is actually the intro to Jump, that is its own separate track called 1984, which is part of the Van Halen 1984 album that has been our rock and roll history for the week.
Yeah, I love that album also.
Yeah, I actually, in 1984, this is before online ticket sales, of course. In 1984, we wanted to go see Van Halen. That happened to be on June 5th, the last day of school of my sophomore year in high school. And the tickets went on sale, a few months earlier. And so we literally camped for 3 days in downtown Salt Lake City when they used to let you do that kind of thing. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done as a teenager, is just hanging out for 3 days.
I too saw Van Halen in 1984, although I don't think Brian saw Van Halen when they were hot. He's had to be...
just to add to that, Pam, the question I get asked a lot in the comments is like, how does Brian know all these bands? No, I know I was born in 1992. I get it, but I love me some of the old classics like Van Halen, Styx, like we talked about, 38 Special, all those classic bands. I mean, they don't make music like they used to.
Understandable, and I agree.
But I must say, the 1984 album, probably one of my top 5 albums of all time. And yeah, Eddie Van Halen's 5150 guitar design, iconic.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
All right. Well, Tom, I don't know. I told you to watch what I think is one of the best shows I've seen on Netflix in a long time. It is called Nobody Wants This. Yep. Did you finish it? That was your homework.
I had homework and I stayed up until almost 1 o'clock this morning finishing it, because, by the way, everyone, I received this homework assignment on Saturday. So
it came late.
I binged the entire 10 episodes in 2.5 days.
I also watched it in 2 days by, I loved it so much. Nikki and I watched it together. We watched 6 episodes and then we watched 4 episodes. And I knew that it was something I wanted to discuss because it made me really think about whether or not I would pursue someone that had core differences like those. And so I thought, where am I going to talk about this? Oh, we have a podcast. Perfect.
A podcast.
A perfect podcast. So I'm glad you watched it. And did you enjoy it?
Yes. Now, I will say, I know that there are probably a lot of guys, probably more guys than not, that don't admit this, but I really like romantic comedies. I mean, I do. I think they're fun. And this this is like the quintessential romantic comedy. And it was the perfect balance of romantic and comedy. I didn't feel it went too far on either side.
I agree. And they're so good. Kristen Bell is so good. And Adam Brody, the chemistry is off the charts. So I'm sure after we get done discussing, everybody's going to go to Netflix. And if they haven't already watched it, they're going to add it to their queue. But I think a lot of people have already watched it. It has probably been #1 since the minute it came out. Do you want to start and talk a little bit about the show? I'm kind of curious what your takeaways were and, how you felt.
Well, yeah. And the beauty of our show is I'm sure we have differing takeaways. I don't know how much we're going to disagree about anything, but there are different things that I'm sure kind of struck us. And I will tell you, as a recovering Mormon, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Mormonism here, but just for those who haven't seen the show, we're going to try our best not to give away the plot line is pretty simple. It's every Hallmark movie you've ever seen.
Yes.
Spread out over 10 episodes. There you go.
It's better than Hallmark, though.
Yes, it's not as cheesy, but it's the same concept. You get the idea. Yeah. But part of the problem, or part of the challenge of the show, is that one of the characters is a Jew and one of them is not, and there are different religious overtones of this show that are really fascinating to me, because as a recovering Mormon, I was struck by how many similarities there were. Like he was struggling to date Kristen Bell. What's his name? Noah, and I can't even remember her name. But Noah, the main guy character, was struggling because she's not Jewish. And that's a big deal for Jewish people. And I remember in high school, I dated this girl. Her name was Tristan. And she was awesome, but she was not a Mormon. And my parents lost their shit that I would even consider dating someone who wasn't a Mormon. And so I sat there feeling his pain. And that's the thing, I identified with him. And that's why I love the show so much. I identified with him in a lot of ways. And I identified with her in a lot of ways. I just kept going, oh, I feel that. I feel that. And so I love that part of it. So
And
what
yeah.
do you think?
Well, that's, from the very first episode, they start, and they're doing a podcast, the sisters. And I was like, oh my God, this is my life. And then as each episode went on, I must have said, this is my life 20 times. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm Jewish. I'm not a practicing Jew. I am agnostic, but I found it fascinating that a show that was that entertaining found a way to also give non-Jews kind of a little bit of education on Judaism. Now, don't worry if you haven't watched the show. It's not a show that's going to make you feel like you're learning a lesson. But they threw in a lot of Jewish things, and that's not ironic because the author, the book that this is based on, the woman bases it on her true life, and this is what happened to her, and she's not Jewish. And so it's her true life. And I was seeing today that that he was really concerned when she told him that she was going to make it into a show. And he said, I have to ask my parents if it's okay. And she's like, well, I've already sold the script. And he went to his parents and he said, is it okay? And they said, it's fine, but whatever you do, don't make us poor. That was their main takeaway. And so,
I don't think I knew this was based on a true story.
Yeah, it is based on a true story. And I have always dated outside of my religion, not by choice, by coincidence. I would date somebody Jewish, but I have not dated many people who are Jewish. But I don't think I would ever date a rabbi. That's like dating a minister, I guess. That's too religious for me. Too many expectations for that. So in this episode, I thought, talking about, their differences, clearly people have pretty firm feelings on whether they would date somebody that is their religion or not. I think most people I know don't care anymore, but a lot of people I'm sure still do care. I, for one, do not care at all. I have no idea. I don't think that you care either, but do you care?
No, I mean, I think it was either last week or just the week before we were talking about dating apps and how people put in, I love Jesus and all that. And the lady that I dated down in Panama City when I lived in Florida, she said, I want a man who loves God first and me second. So, that kind of stuff I do care about because, that kind of thing I do disagree with. But, I don't care what their religion is as long as that is not the entirety of their personality and life. And if you're at church 7 days a week, we just aren't gonna work together.
Right. But they had a lot of other conflicts too. I mean, I used to think that opposites attract. And I thought that was, we've heard that our whole lives, opposites attract. I used to think it was a great reason to date somebody. But based on my last relationship, I feel like it's easier probably to date somebody who looks at things the same way that you do. I think the more that not just having things in common, but like seeing things the same way, not having to convince somebody that the way that you see it is the right way or the wrong way, just to be with somebody who is very laid back and somebody that, makes their decisions similarly to how you make them. So I think that
maybe not the same decisions, but the same decision-making process. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, for instance, you're very black and white and I'm very gray. And so we've talked about that a lot on the podcast. And, I definitely have come to realize that I need to date people who are not very black and white, people who are very flexible, people who maybe aren't sure of what they want. More of a I'll know it when I see it mentality, which is kind of how I have always entered into dating.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. Going back to the show again, These two main characters. What was her name in the show? I can't even remember.
I don't remember. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me. I know I call her Kristen Bell. So
yeah, so Kristen Bell and Noah. I don't know his real name. I just know him as
Adam
Noah.
Brody.
Adam Brody. So I'm going to call him Noah, though, because I
Okay.
remember his character name. So one of the things that that was a difference for them, and it's not about decision-making process or anything, it's just a hardcore difference, is their openness versus privacy on social media and stuff. Like, for example, she was totally into social media, and she's a
Mhm.
podcaster about dating and relationships. And I mean, it seemed like he didn't even have social media accounts, and if he did, they were pretty muted. Um, and he was like stunned that she was so willing to share everything.
I remember that. Yeah, and I think he was really worried about how his family
Right.
would react to that too. And then his mother in the show does wind up listening to some of their podcasts. Now, their podcast, unlike ours, is pretty much just a female-centric podcast about sex. And if not sex, everything related to very personal topics going so far as to, you know, get into very specifics about vibrators and samples and having sex experts. So not quite like our show, but somebody should start that podcast, because I was very entertained by the idea of their podcast. Um,
Absolutely.
so what is your question as far as social media?
Well, my question is that, here you are back on the market, so to speak, and
Yeah.
someone with a podcast.
Right.
And do you find, or does it, I mean, are you concerned that you're going to have people saying, "Hey, you have a podcast?
Well,
I don't want to go out with you because I'm going to be part of your show."
first of all, nobody would know I have a podcast until a first date. So they would at least have gotten to meet me first. That's not something that I'm going to put on a dating profile. I don't think that's personal. I don't want people to know too much that's very personal. Otherwise, you have nothing to talk about on a first date. But
Okay.
I do feel like Noah, that somebody who really wants a relationship with you, and I'll tell you what, after watching the show, you know exactly how you want a man to make you feel if you're a woman. Like, you want a man that makes you feel like you're not too much. What you do for a living is okay. No matter how he felt about it, he fell so hard for her, and really so fast,
Yeah.
that nothing was off limits. I mean, even though it might have not been comfortable for him, he was not willing to sacrifice what he felt for her to get into it. A little unrealistic, in my opinion. In real life, somebody probably would get into it. I feel pretty confident in saying that I would not talk about a relationship on our podcast unless I asked the person I was dating if it was okay. So I'm hoping I wouldn't divulge things that they didn't want me to divulge. But after the relationship ends, they don't really get that much of a vote. But I don't think that I'm the kind of person who would do hurtful, mean, angry things. Even if I am hurt and angry, I don't think that I would bring that to the podcast. So I think it'll be okay. But how do you know? You don't know
Yeah.
until you know.
Yeah. Well, so there was one other thing that I wanted to ask you about this. You just talked about how this, you could tell that he made her feel. I can't remember how you just said that, but this is exactly how a woman wants to feel, or something like
Yeah.
that. And one of the things, like, and I'm not giving away too much of the show, guys. So if you haven't watched this is not a spoiler. Um, Literally, the opening scene of episode 1. Noah is dating someone. This is before he meets Kristen Bell. And the opening scene of the show, he realizes he doesn't feel for her what he thinks he should feel,
Right.
and ends the relationship.
Right.
Now, you don't see the end of the relationship. You just know that the relationship is over. And so he was looking for a feeling that he didn't have. And I don't know how long they'd been going out. It seems like it's been quite a while based on what you hear through the
Yeah,
rest
I
of
think it
the.
looks like it was years because
Yeah,
the
it seems
families
like it
were
was
very
a
invested.
long time. But he didn't feel it, so he ended it. And but he felt it. It appears like, of course, this is, again, a Hallmark movie kind of a thing. And the minute he meets Kristen Bell, it's like, now he's feeling it.
Right.
And again, you said that was kind of not necessarily that, but it's kind of an unrealistic thing, because I think it happened like just a week later or something. I mean, the way that
Yeah.
it seems like it moved, like you said, really fast.
Yeah, we commented that I think it couldn't have been more than a few months.
Yeah. But the thing is, Holy crap. Hold on. It's my boss trying to call. See, we're just advertising all sorts of stuff here. But one of the things is that, he ended that relationship with his girlfriend, this pre-Kristen Bell relationship. And he realized that he was with her because everyone else wanted him to be with her. So
Right.
I know we've talked about on my whiteboard over here, we've got future episodes planned. And one of those is, how important is like a family's or your friends or family's opinions. But what do you think about that? Let's just do a quick minute on that, and we'll do a whole episode about that.
All right. Well, let me touch base first on, I think the reason that he fell so quickly for Kristen Bell's character is because she's not Jewish. This is a man that I feel has only dated Jewish women and religious women, and this woman in particular, who was prepared to be the wife of a rabbi. So this whole circle that you see in the show, everybody's Jewish other than Adam Brody and his friends, and I guess his family. But it's really based in Judaism, the show. And I think that Kristen Bell was so different than anything he had ever experienced. Her personality, her podcast, her sexuality. I think that's why he fell as fast as he did. When it comes to your question about friends and family, I think that we all really want our friends and family to like our significant other. Is it do or die? I would hope that my friends and family would like at least pretend to like my significant other if I really liked them. I feel like it's important to me that whoever I'm with is a good fit with my kids, with my dad, and maybe with my friends. I mean, the gentleman that I was dating that just ended, I never introduced him to my friends because I just didn't feel like it would be a good fit. And so it just never happened. So, maybe I think that probably moving forward, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I would want to introduce them to my friends early. I do like to know what other people think. I do like to get other people's opinions. Would I base a final decision on what somebody else thought? No, but I would hear it and I would think about it, that's as much as I think I would say about friends and family and relationships today.
Yeah. By the way, her name's Joanne.
Oh, you Googled it.
I did. Kind of like Joanne and the girls at the camp.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those shows. I mean, like there's a kiss in this show. If you haven't watched this show, I'm telling you, there's a kiss that is so hot that while you're watching it, you literally I was on fire watching that kiss. I don't think I have felt fire like that in 5 years. So I saw that kiss and the way that he put his hand behind her neck. And all I thought was, I'm not kissing anybody unless they kiss me like that. Like, holy shit. Like that was just smoking hot. And so, I think there are a lot of things in this show that will make single people especially say, I want that. I want that. I must have said it 50 times in 10 episodes. And a lot of those episodes aren't even 30 minutes, but there was never an episode where I didn't at least one time say, I want that. And I think that's what the show was designed to do. And I think that that's what we all should want. We should want that fire. And so, yeah, I mean, holy hell. I don't know how that kiss made you feel when you watched it. Have you ever kissed anybody like that?
Not that I can recall. I mean, you're right. I'm generally not the guy that's like, oh, that is quite a kiss. But
go back and watch that kiss. It's almost tutoring for men. Like, that's how women want to be kissed. We want to be kissed where our whole body feels it. And they were standing up. So like if anybody's thinking this is a kiss that happened in bed, it's not. They were standing up. I mean, fully clothed. Another scene in the show dealt with icks. And I thought that was really funny because I've made a couple of videos on TikTok lately about icks. And I made them while I was still in my relationship just to kind of see how people would feel about some icks that he had. And I wanted to see, what the comments were. And this show delves into icks, not hardcore, but into the possibility that something is going in a way that you didn't plan for it to go. And all of a sudden you just get an ick. And I always think of an ick as the actual thing that happened, what you're wearing, what you said, your hair that day. But in the show, it's a general feeling that cancels a relationship out. So at one point, she gets an ick and she's ready to end the relationship over an ick. And it made me really think about icks in general and how I always think of them as much more shallow things. But on this show, man, she was really trying to protect her heart and get out of that relationship. And having that ick, like, she was ready to go. She was ready to move on. And what happens after that? I'm not gonna say it because that is a little bit of a spoiler. But again, holy hell! Like, if anybody said those words to me as I was trying to exit a relationship, I would be a frickin' puddle.
Well, I will tell you I
Noah,
laughed
oh,
so
my
hard.
heart.
I laughed so hard at the ick scene. Because it was it was pretty icky.
And I've had icks. I'm sure you've had icks.
Yep.
We've all had them. And I have had some icks that were so bad, like bad breath or bad
Right.
teeth or something that you didn't know initially, and then you're just like, I can't date this person. But using an ick to get out of a relationship that you're just terrified. You're terrified of how much you're feeling, and so you almost create an ick, and then the other person is like, that's not happening. Sorry,
Yep.
no. I mean, they wrote Noah to make all women want Noah.
Yeah.
She's a little bit of a mess. I still love Kristen Bell, but her character's a little bit of a mess.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what. Before we move on to the last thing, the next thing, I have one last question for you about
Sure.
the show, because one of the other themes of the show is sacrifice.
Mhm.
What are you willing to give up or sacrifice for love or for a relationship or whatever you want to call it? And so my question is, do you think that love or relationships should require sacrifice, or should it be easy?
Well, it's a great question, and I think it's probably why a lot of relationships don't last. But I don't know if most relationships require sacrifice, but they certainly require a lot of compromise. This show is more, can somebody make a big sacrifice? But then again, I'm a romantic at heart, and there's probably very little that I wouldn't compromise on to be in a really good, loving, healthy relationship, as long as it didn't compromise something that mattered to me, something that I felt strongly about. I think at 57, I'm going to be true to who I am, and whoever I'm with is going to love that about me. I don't think that I could make a major life sacrifice for somebody else. But I have learned recently I can put up with a lot more than I thought I could put up with, and I can compromise more than I think. I came out of my marriage saying I'm never going to compromise again. And I found that I was very willing to compromise. So the relationship, even though it ended, left me with a lot of knowledge that I
Mhm.
didn't have. Some of it good, some of it bad, but I certainly do know that I would compromise for the right person.
Well,
What about you? I mean, what was your takeaway as far as sacrifice goes?
from the show itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, yourself more than the show. How did it make you think about what you're willing to, compromise or sacrifice? You have a list, so, I wonder, like, he's nothing like you. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's watched the show knows that Noah and Tom are complete opposites, because he's very gray. He's very flexible, because he will put up with anything pretty much that is thrown at him.
Yeah, very flexible. I compromise and sacrifice are different for me.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's not me trying to be black and white or stick to the definitions. But compromise, sure, I'm willing to compromise on a lot of things, but not everything. In fact, I have a very strong list of things that I'm unwilling to compromise on. But almost everything outside of that list is on the list of things to compromise. But as far as sacrifice, as I was thinking about the show and what both of them, but mainly him, I don't think she had to sacrifice a whole lot, to be honest, for this relationship.
Not in season 1.
Oh, is there going to be another season?
Oh yeah. Yes, there's going to be another season there.
Oh,
They ended on a cliffhanger. So, well, a little bit.
I
guess
thought
they didn't.
I didn't see that as a cliffhanger, but that's okay. I'm
I
glad.
know
I'm
you're
really
right.
looking
You're
forward to
actually
it.
right. You're right. It wasn't a cliffhanger, but there is a season 2. I feel like there's plenty of sacrificing to be made on this show.
Okay. Well, up until this point, it seems like he's done most of the sacrificing.
Yes.
It just feels that way to me.
Mhm.
And I was, and as I was, because it was homework, I was, and by the way, enjoyable homework, just making sure everybody
Good.
understands I really did enjoy the show. But I took notes. I had my phone out in my notes app, and I just sat there taking notes. And one of the things I wrote down were the lyrics to a song. Not that I'm writing the song, but one of my favorite bands is called The Offspring, and they have a song called Self-Esteem. And in the chorus, it says, I guess I should stick up for myself, but I really think it's better this way. The more you suffer, the more it shows you really care. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it just made me think. And I'm like, the whole time going, Noah, dude, yeah, it's Kristen Bell. She's cute as a Dickens, but look what you're giving up.
Oh, I don't think he was sacrificing at all. I think that he was feeling things he had never, I think that he was literally having the best time of his life. He was not sacrificing anything. No, nor do I think that nobody should give up their dreams for somebody else. But at the same time, if that person feels bigger than what your dreams have always been, maybe
Then you
that's
give
what's
up
going
to
to
your
make you
dreams.
happier. I mean, what?
Then you give up your dreams, apparently.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel like in that situation, he was getting, yes, she wasn't changing who she was. She wasn't Jewish. She had a podcast that did continue, although it's clear in the show that she did really hold back after they started dating. But yeah, I feel like if one of them or both of them were willing to sacrifice, it was because they were feeling things that they had never felt. And I feel like I would probably sacrifice for that too.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Do you have anything else you want to add to that before we jump
No,
into our
go
next
watch
segment?
the show. It's
Yeah.
called Nobody Wants This. It's been out for about 10 days. It's been number 1 since it came out. And listen, I've been reading all your comments on Spotify. We opened up comments. I've been reading them all. So if you want to tell us what you think about the show on YouTube or Spotify, I will read them and I will reply. I am really curious to see what people think and how they feel about where we stand on this show.
Yeah. And make sure, I mean, now's a great time. Pause the podcast and take just a minute to rate and review us. And like Pam just said, if you haven't watched the show yet, take a minute. Well, take several hours and watch the show. And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are. Write it in the comments in the review. So that'd be great. Okay. So I think we're ready to move on to the next little segment here.
You've got mail.
Always time that. All right, here we go. Pam and Tom, my boyfriend and I have been dating for 10 months already. 44-year-old male, 39-year-old female, but it's long distance relationship. We live 3 hours apart, so we only meet once a month, twice if we're lucky. He's a good man, very gentle, very kind, smart, and handsome, but I just feel like I'm falling out of love already. I understand his love language is words of affirmation, but I can't help but feel numb and hollow when the only thing he sends me are long text messages of how much he loves and cares for me. We do video call each other, but all of those things just don't seem enough to me. I miss physical touch, my love language. I really want this to work, but neither of us can move because of our jobs for at least another 2 to 3 years. How do I know if I'm throwing away the man of my dreams or if these feelings I'm having are not just because I really want this to work? I think I should miss him after our visits, but I've gotten used to being apart and I feel a little relieved when he leaves and things go back to normal. We are both doing our best, but I'm tired of doing things by myself most of the month. Sometimes I think about being with someone closer because there's a chance after all of this that it still won't work out between us. I know that Pam is in a long distance relationship too and figured you guys could help. Sincerely, distance is killing me. And of course, email came in before this episode. So she wrote this without knowing that my long distance relationship had come to an end. Hopefully I can be even more helpful now and not talk her out of it. That would not be very fair. Maybe you need to start, and I will think on it for a moment.
Yeah. When I was reading this, when you sent it over to me, I first off, I feel awful for these two people. They've been together for almost a year. It's a long distance thing. They've been together for 10 months and they only meet once a month, twice if they're lucky. So we're talking a dozen meetups basically.
And they're only 3 hours apart. So I was really surprised by that.
Yeah.
Because my long distance relationship was a plane ride away.
Mhm.
So like, why couldn't they see each other more than that?
Yeah, that seems like a lack of effort on one or both of their part. But the one that broke my heart, I'm trying to find it here, says, "I can't help but feel numb and hollow."
Yeah.
Those words just, and by the way, the reason that hit me so hard is because my love language is words of affirmation. And so I totally understand him saying, look, all I know how to do is send you long texts and video call with you and do he's doing what he can. Again, 3 hours apart notwithstanding.
Right.
I mean, 3 hours, you should see each other every weekend. I'm sorry.
Right.
One of you should be willing to drive, or you should be willing to meet in the middle or something.
But we don't know the backstory. We don't know if there are kids involved. We don't know the logistics of the jobs that are keeping them in separate states.
True.
I feel like something is amiss.
Yeah. But the fact that despite him doing what he can do, I mean, like you just said, maybe there's something else that makes them so they can't get together more frequently. I get it. But assuming that's all true, and therefore the only thing that you can do is talk on the phone, send texts, video call. I mean, what else
Right.
is there?
Well,
I guess he could
sexting.
write her a letter and send it in the mail.
I
But
said sexting.
yeah,
They could
sexting.
sex. I mean, I feel like most long distance relationships, mine that ended also, would probably benefit from sexting. I feel like if both parties are open to that, I feel like that might build intimacy between the two people. Now, we didn't do that, but I feel like maybe if they're listening or she's listening, and I did tell her that we would be talking about her email today, maybe they need to get a little more intimate during the time when they're not together than just long texts about emotions, because that's just words.
Well, but again, as a words of affirmation person, someone says those are just words. That's like saying your love language is irrelevant.
Yeah, but
What it seems like to me is that they're having a tough time speaking each other's love language.
yeah.
And again, maybe it's because he doesn't know her love language. Maybe they haven't had that conversation. But at the same time, sexting isn't going to fix the physical touch thing, which she said she misses.
No, it's not going to fix it. But for people who are thinking about going into a long distance relationship, you really need to think about all of that time that you're not going to be together. I mean, they've only been dating for 10 months, and it's going to be 2 or 3 more years where this is all she's going to get, unless they ramp up the amount of times that they see each other, or they need to find some other way to connect. I
Yep.
hate to say that I don't see this lasting, and I am probably a little bit pessimistic, having just come out of a long distance relationship. Those weeks, she said she doesn't miss him. And, when you have that time that you don't know when you're going to see that person again, maybe you can keep that adrenaline or excitement going. But if you know it's going to be a month later, I mean, I can certainly relate to the fact that as soon as you aren't with that person, you're just comfortable back in your own life.
Mhm.
You know, you should be missing that person. If she's not missing him, then in my book, that's probably a sign that they're not a good match. But again, that's coming from my own experience, which she has asked for. So I'm going to give it. My experience is that you should miss that person. You should be crying sad when you take them to the airport or when they drive away. feel like that pit, that hole in your gut, like something is missing. And if you don't feel those things, but you're in it and you're willing to spend 2 or 3 years in it, then maybe you're not really ready for a relationship, or at least maybe this is just a placeholder for another relationship that you should be in.
My bottom line on this, just reading the email and understanding that he's doing, at least it seems like, what he knows how to do, giving whatever words he can, but there's no way his words can fulfill her physical touch needs.
Right. Absolutely true.
Unless, and this is the Tom's approach and Tom's theory, of course, unless they can find a way to spend more time together, there is no way she makes it another 2 to 3 years. If she's already feeling numb and hollow inside, as I think is the word she used,
right?
It just, my heart breaks for her. But you know, just last week or the week before, we were talking about how grateful we are when people put stuff on dating apps that like you immediately swipe left and go, oh, I'm dodging the bullet before the bullet's even fired.
Right.
This, to me, this is a bullet that has been fired and she can dodge it now. Granted, they've been together for 10 months, but still, it's not going to get any better. I'm sorry.
Right. And I think that we romanticize long distance relationships. I mean, you know, especially if you're exhausted from dating and you meet somebody that's great, that lives far away from you, you know, I think that people, and you know, it's funny, it was our first ever episode where we talked about lowering your standards. But I think that when you are opposed to long distance and then you go ahead and go into it anyway, you are in effect lowering your standard, because my love language is physical touch. And well, physical touch is my main love language also. And so, you know, if the only physical touch that you can experience is 2 or 3 days a month, it's just not, it's not romantic. You want it to be romantic, but it's not. And unfortunately, if she's holding on because she doesn't want to go back into the dating world, which I can thoroughly relate to, my advice is better to just be single and enjoy your life and date when you're ready than to spend the next 2 or 3 years of your life feeling hollow and lonely.
Yep. Totally agree. I feel bad. I feel bad. You know, usually you want to say, oh no, you can work it out, have a conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't know if they've sat and talked about this for hours on end. And either way, unless there is some way that they can take control over time and space and somehow get together more often, I just don't see how they can fix it.
Right. And if it's a timing issue, maybe it'll come back around when one of you guys can relocate. But in the meantime, you guys should both, I don't know with him, maybe he's perfectly happy in long distance, but you should not be feeling lonely and hollow. Life is too short. All right. Well, if that's all we got on that, I will thank everybody for sending these emails to us. As you know, I read every single one of them. The email address to send us your emails is talkingphase@gmail.com. I will read them all. I will send the ones that I think are great for the show to Tom. We will discuss which one we think we may be able to help. You know that we are not experts, so we are just doing our best here. But please send them over. We love hearing from you. Again, I'll let you know when we're going to read them on air, if we are going to read them on air. talkingphase@gmail.com.
Awesome. And with that, guys, thanks everybody for listening this week. Again, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch Nobody Wants This. It's a great series on Netflix. I assume it's going to be there for quite a while, so it's not like you have to hurry up before they get rid of it. But I hope you enjoy that. And then take a few minutes or take a few seconds. It only takes a second to rate and review the Talking Phase podcast on whatever app you're using to listen or watch us. We are posting videos now on Spotify as well. They let us do that now. That's pretty cool. But if you have thoughts on long distance relationships, thoughts on Nobody Wants This, you know, did we miss something? You know, maybe Pam and I saw the surface and there was some deeper meaning that we missed, you know, feel free, let us know. And then be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, especially those that have a good sense of humor and can enjoy a good time. So with that, we drop a new episode every single Friday morning. Be sure to follow us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. With that, until next Friday, this is Tom and Pam signing off.
Have a great day, week, month, whole of October. Happy Halloween.